Hi, everyone.
Hi, Gretchen.
Hello. Thanks for joining me again today. I'm going to give everyone about 30 more seconds to join on before we get started. Anyone have any questions or things they want to talk about from last week or just any nutrition things in general?
I don't think I did. Sounded pretty informative.
Awesome. Fabulous. Great. So today we're going to talk all about building a healthy kitchen. So last week was more about physiology and the physiology of stress and what food does for us. From that point of view, this is going to be more habit-based, practical information that can help set us up for success. And can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yay! Fabulous. All right, we're going to get this party started. I'm going to share my screen with you here. And we're going to talk, like I said, all about building a healthy kitchen. So let's just talk about the objectives of the day. We're going to talk about how to organize our kitchen to help set us up for success. Whenever I think of successful eating, I think about bumper bowling. So I don't know about you, but I'm not a very good bowler. So if I don't have tools in place that are going to help me be successful when it comes to eating healthy, my ball is going to fall into the gutter, so to speak. So I like you to think about healthy eating kind of like bumper bowling. You want to have those tools, aka the bumpers on hand, to keep you from falling into the gutter. So we're going to talk a lot today about how to organize your kitchen into zones so that you can be super organized and have those healthy foods on hand. We're going to talk a little bit about food safety in the different kitchen zones. We'll talk about kitchen tools and how they can be used to help you prepare foods more efficiently. And we'll talk about some strategies for preparing recipes that may make things a little bit easier. So I think this is so interesting. You know, I don't do a whole lot of interactive stuff on here, but this is a little interactive today. How many, and just you could just shout this out, how many food choices do you think you make per day?
Ooh.
10.
2.
I said 10.
10, good guess. Any other guesses?
22.
22. You guys ready for the answer?
Yes.
200.
Oh.
Isn't that crazy? So we make about 200 decisions, and if you think about it, you wake up in the morning. Maybe you have coffee or tea. You're deciding if you're putting anything in your coffee or tea, or if you're drinking it black. Then you're deciding what you're having for breakfast. And there's multiple foods at breakfast time. Then maybe you're having a snack. Then you're having lunch and you're deciding between leftovers or maybe making a tuna salad. Then you're maybe having another snack. And then, man, all the choices that and decisions that come with making dinner, it adds up fast. So your environment matters a lot. So keeping foods on hand to make healthy food choices can make these decision-making process easier. If you have less decisions to make, it's easier to choose the thing that you have to work less hard for. So if you set yourself up with a healthy kitchen, you have less decisions you have to make. So really, setting up your kitchen is the #1 strategy to ensuring success. One great way to think about the kitchen is to divide it into zones. We have our refrigerator, freezer, pantry, and countertop, and we're going to run through those today. But kind of thinking about organizing those spaces according to what you want to see nutrition-wise is super helpful. So I'm going to start with the refrigerator, and we are going to work from the top down. So the very top shelf of the refrigerator should be your ready-to-eat foods. So things like dairy products, leftovers, cooked meals, and prepared salads. These foods should always be covered just to prevent any contamination, and they should be stored away from raw foods. We'll talk about where raw foods go in a little bit.
I'm sorry, can you say that again? They should be stored away from what?
Away from raw foods. So your raw meats and things like that. So we're talking about like our yogurts go up here, cheeses, containers of leftovers, that sort of stuff. The middle is also another good place for leftovers, and you can have in the middle other packaged things like hummus, eggs, cooked meats. Those are great. Your bottom shelf is where you want to store your raw stuff. So your raw meat, poultry, and fish should go down here. When you're storing raw meat and poultry, make sure you're keeping it in a container so it doesn't leak. Another reason it's on the bottom shelf is so that it doesn't leak onto your prepared foods, because you don't want to have to throw all that stuff out. It's a real shame. And then the fruits and vegetable drawers. I find, and I actually didn't know this for a really long time, but you know how they have those little sliders that can, for vegetables or fruits, depending on how much humidity should be getting in? So those sliders allow you to control how much humidity is getting in the salad drawer, or the fruits and vegetable drawer. So you can kind of decide, you know, where you're going to put your fruits, where you're going to put your vegetables, and usually it'll tell you like vegetables are a little bit less humidity and fruits are a little bit more humidity. When you're storing greens, if you have any fresh greens, it's always a good idea to store those in a container that can breathe a little bit, and also putting them in between paper towels. Slightly damp paper towels can be very helpful as well. If you have any herbs, I don't know about you, but you buy those herbs in those packs, it's the middle of winter and you don't have any that are growing, or you just randomly need some oregano, some fresh oregano. One thing you can do to make those last longer is you can actually put them in a little vase and treat them like flowers. Or leave them in your refrigerator. So another thing when we're talking about the refrigerator and vegetables and fruits, so what kinds of fruits and vegetables are going to go in here? So the vegetables that are going to go in your refrigerator are going to be like your leafy greens, peppers, broccoli, cauliflower, cucumbers, lots of different things that can go in here. We will talk in a little bit about what foods you can keep on the countertop too. When it comes to fruits, your berries definitely want to go in the refrigerator, grapes, ripe avocados, any sort of protein really should be going in a refrigerator unless it's a shelf-stable protein. So those are things you want to think about when you're putting stuff in the refrigerator. One thing that, yes, Trish.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
So I don't know if I should wait till the end, but I've always wondered, should you be putting your fruits and vegetables like unwrapped and pre-washed loose into the crisper drawers, or do you keep them in their own, you know,
Container or
bags that you
bag?
get from the grocery store? Yeah.
So if it's a leafy green, you want to put it into a bag, or even those clamshells that you get in the grocery store are okay. So you want to put the leafy greens in some sort of a container or a bag. I really like, you can get at like Target, and even the drugstores usually sell this, like some sort of vegetable container that's a little bit vented so a little bit of air can get in. They also have those things on the bottom that kind of raise the vegetables up so there's some air circulation in the bottom so you don't get as much spoilage at the bottom. Those are really great. Everything
Not
else,
the regular,
peppers, cauliflower, any of that stuff, let them float around. That's just fine. And then just wash them. Once you prep them, though, you cut them up, then I would put them into a container. And that's something that can really set you up for success, is prepping these vegetables ahead of time. So you can wash and chop those sturdy cruciferous vegetables, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, broccoli, even things like bell peppers, snacking veggies, I like to call them, cucumbers, any of that kind of stuff. You can celery, you can prep those ahead of time and then package them up so your veggies are ready for easy snacking or ready for your meals. I also love the concept of roasting a vegetable tray for the week. If you're somebody that doesn't really love cooked vegetables, but roasted vegetables are tolerable to you, this can be a great way to just have those available. You can heat them up or not, throw them on a salad, and they add an extra depth of flavor, and they last for a few days. So how long can you store foods? There's a chart that will go through that you can see here. So take a peek at this chart. I'm just going to tell you my general rule of thumb. If you have cooked leftovers, leave them in the refrigerator and eat them for up to 4 days. You could push it to 5, but 4 is a good rule of thumb. And then as far as your raw poultry and ground meats, keeping them for about 2 to 3 days in the refrigerator before you freeze them is a smart plan. So especially now, if you tend to shop for maybe 2 weeks at a time, or certainly a week at a time, trying to minimize how many trips you make to the grocery store, buy a lot of meats, but just freeze them in advance. So people always ask, oh, well, what's better, fresh versus frozen? What should, what should be, what's better for me? The good news is that both are super healthy. I didn't know this until super recently, but the man who actually invented the flash freezing technique, his actual name is Birdseye. So that's why there's the Birdseye brand. But the flash freezing technique is really great because the freezing actually prevents the cells inside the fruits and vegetables that are frozen from deteriorating. So it's an excellent source and the nutrients are preserved. So great things to eat when it comes to frozen stuff that will keep for a while. You've got broccoli, cauliflower, any of your sturdy vegetables are great. Spinach is great to throw in recipes, green beans, carrots. As we know, the texture tends with the vegetables tends to be really soft, so they do better in cooked dishes versus standalone on the plate. Berries, when it comes to fruits, avocados and berries are great things to buy frozen. They defrost fairly well. The berries, again, may be something you want to use in a recipe, but I honestly think they're just fine throwing in some yogurt too. You can also freeze things yourself, especially fruits, so frozen grapes, frozen berries. If you freeze them on a flat tray first and then put them into a bag, they won't get smushed. You can also freeze lots of leftovers, so if you have leftover soups, pancakes. Don't freeze them though all in one big container, because chances are you're not going to go back and eat all of that container at once. It works a lot better if you freeze them into individual servings. So if you don't have something for lunch and it's 8 a.m. and you're running out the door, hopefully in the future this will be your scenario, you can grab that, go, and you have an easy instant meal that you can grab out of your freezer. You can do the same thing with servings of rice and grains. Those freeze really well, quinoa, rice, and then you can just defrost those and use those in various dishes as you need. When you do freeze, there's some techniques that work really well. First of all, number one, you want to label everything. I'll fully admit I'm the worst at labeling, and I always tell myself, oh, I'll know what that is. There's no way I can forget what this is. And 2 months later, completely forgot what it is. So it's like mystery leftovers. So labeling everything is really good. Most things can be stored for somewhere between 3 to 6 months, and then after that, the nutritional quality starts to be depleted, especially with your leftovers. Freezing things flat is really helpful. So make sure you freeze things in a flat layer, and then you can stack them up either side to side or up and down, however works best for you. The pantry is another area which I feel like sometimes you open it and you don't really know what's in there. So 4 good rules to think about. You want the food that's in the pantry to be visible. So mason jars are really great, especially for things like nuts, seeds, and grains. You also want the food to stay fresh. Again, mason jars really help to make sure everything stays fresh versus having things in open bags that just kind of hang out in various places. The pantry should also be organized, and we'll kind of go through an organization system here in a second. And then you want it to be something that's colorful and inviting. Obviously, this pantry example here, this is not mine, by the way. I wish it was. But it's very organized, colorful, and that can be a real thing that can help people, set people up for success in choosing healthy options if you know what's there and it looks nice to open it. So dividing your pantry into zones can help things not get lost. I don't know about you, but I lose things in my pantry all the time. And there's nothing more irritating than buying another $10 bag of cashews when you have a fresh one already in there that you just forgot about. That was maybe in the wrong spot or something like that. So when you divide things up, canned protein should go in one area. So your wet items like your like your fats and your oils and things like that should go in another area. Beans and grains can go in another area. Seasonings, nuts and seeds, spices and herbs, baking items, and teas and coffee. Now you can make up your own system too. That's absolutely fine. And if you didn't catch all of that, don't worry. Your bonus for participating in this series is today you're going to receive an email that's going to have all these pantry zones and kitchen zones and the foods that belong in each of those areas listed out for you. So if you're kind of struggling to think about what foods belong where, or maybe what you should be buying to set yourself up for success, this will be a nice guide. So you can see here when we're talking about wet items, we have our, I forgot to mention our like almond milks and things like that that are shelf stable can go in here. Also our tomato sauces, coconut milk, beans and grains. A lot of times those are canned and that's great. There's nothing wrong with canned beans. We've got our oils and our seasonings, nuts and seeds, flavor boosters. Everyone's like, what's that? But that's stuff like olives or maple syrup or different spice paste or something like that that adds a kind of an extra zip. Condiments would go in this section too. And then of course, herbs and spices. The countertop. Some people keep food on their countertop, some people don't. Totally up to you. But when we think about the countertop, actually Cornell has a whole food and brand lab. They do a lot of research on placement of foods in cafeterias and restaurants and things like that. And they found that people increased their fruit and vegetable consumption threefold when they place fruits and vegetables on a countertop. Something to think about. Fruits and vegetables that hang out on the countertop for a few days are going to be things like pineapple, tomatoes, bananas, melon, avocados, and stone fruits. So think about things like peaches. And then other foods that will keep well, and those things will ripen well at room temperature. So I'm sure you all do this with your bananas, keep them out until they turn brown. And then foods that will keep well on the countertop for several days, but then you'll want to put them in the refrigerator about 2 to 3 days, are going to be your oranges or clementines, apples, grapefruit, cherries, and pomegranates. But those kind of have, they need to be in the refrigerator after 2 to 3 days, so they start to get a little mushy. But having some of that stuff on the countertop, having a nice basket for your fruits and your vegetables on the countertop, fabulous idea. So when you think about your kitchen tools, I don't know about you, but sometimes your kitchen tool drawers become junk drawers and there's just like, you know, stuff's everywhere and you don't quite know where everything is at a time. Having a drawer where you put stuff that's used daily or a space where you put your daily stuff is a good idea. Your stuff that you use a little less often, maybe a few times a month, should be in another space. And then, you know, things you don't use very often, maybe your slow cooker, although some people use that a lot, or maybe like an immersion blender or some of those more unusual appliances, those can be stored in a more remote. I know we have a yogurt maker that I haven't used in over 6 months. It's probably time to donate. So we're going to talk a little bit about tools. I just want to go over some little tips and tricks here. Knives are really important. You really only need 2 kinds of knives though. You need a chef's knife, which is the longer knife in the middle. So it's the most important knife you can have in your kitchen and it's fabulous. That's what you want to be using when you're chopping. And then your paring knife is like the little knife. It's like the miniature chef's knife. The blade is usually 2 to 4 inches long, and that's more for things like peeling onions, coring tomatoes, trimming vegetables, but also something you can use frequently. Best way to store knives is to use a kitchen block or a drawer, like a knife block inside of a drawer. You never want to put your knives in the dishwasher. The dishwasher will ruin those blades. When it comes to there are other tools on here. You just can kind of see the pictures. I'm sure most of you have used these. And if you have any questions on anything you see, I can take those questions at the end. When it comes to quantifying or measuring different ingredients, we have measurements for dry ingredients and wet ingredients. Dry ingredients should be measured in the silver measuring cups. That helps us measure out a flat layer of whatever dry ingredient, flour, sugar, whatever we are measuring. And wet ingredients belong in the measuring cup that looks like an actual cup with a spout on the end. Those are more suited for quantifying liquid best. When it comes to herbs and spices, or if you're only measuring things in whether it's wet or dry in teaspoons or tablespoons, just use the regular old teaspoons and tablespoons for wet or dry ingredients. These are some examples of things that help to separate. So colanders, slotted spoons, things like that. Mixing and spreading. I did want to just point out, I really like wooden spoons because they don't, when they're added to something hot, they don't add any weird flavors or chemicals. So having wooden spoons around to stir your spaghetti sauce or any other dish you may be making is a really good added tool. I also really like the silicone spatulas and things like that for baking. They clean really easily, which is nice, and but not something you want to be putting necessarily in a hot dish. And then we have things like can openers. And then we always talk about glass versus plastic. So should you be using plastic bags? Should you be using plastic containers? What's the deal? Ideally, you're looking for plastic that's BPA free. We want to minimize the amount of toxins that we're getting in through our containers. And trying not to eat plastic containers is a good idea. Glass containers are preferable because they aren't going to emit any toxins into your food when you heat. All right, pots and pans. These are the basics. And I would even take the wok out of this. You don't necessarily need a wok, but having a nice stock pot, a saute pan, and then a sauteer pan is really nice. The saute pan, sauteing fruits and vegetables in there, or even pan frying meats, great tool. That's probably my most used pan in the kitchen. And then I also like a good stock pot for those one pot soups, stews, etc. that you may want to be making. So baking versus roasting. This is really interesting. When you're baking, it means you're sticking something in the oven between 350 and 450 degrees, usually, just closer to 350. And you're not necessarily adding any extra fat to it. Roasting is usually a little bit of a higher temp, usually between 400 and 425 degrees, and you're adding some fat to that. I love roasted vegetables. They are absolutely fabulous. And like I said earlier, you can make a whole sheet pan of those and save the leftovers to put on top of your salad. It's a great tool and a great way to prep things in advance. These aren't necessarily things you have to have, but they're super helpful. The Instant Pot and slow cooker are great tools for making one pot dinners. Blenders are great tools for making smoothies and things like that. Your stand mixers, that's a great baking tool if you're more of a baker. But these may be things you don't use all the time. I will say cast iron, whether it's a grill pan or just a regular pan, another great tool. Once you season it correctly, you don't have to worry about things getting stuck. It's a really great tool, and the only thing leaching into your food is a little bit of extra iron, which really isn't a bad thing unless your doctor has told you otherwise. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about making dishes. A couple things that, again, can set you up for success. Number one, when you're making, following a recipe or making dinner or whatever, read through your recipe if you're following a very specific recipe. Read through it first. That way you don't get halfway through. This happens to me all the time, I'll totally admit it. And you realize, oh my gosh, I don't even have this ingredient. Or, oh my gosh, I forgot to do something I was supposed to do at the beginning. So make sure you read through and then prep your area. The most important thing you can do is get all your stuff lined up, all your tools. Make sure you have a nice big bowl for your trash so you're not running back and forth between your workspace and the trash can. And it will make your prep time so much faster and more efficient. So lay everything out that you need, and then have your prep area, and then have everything set up like your pots and pans at your cook area. It makes cleanup so much easier. It makes making the actual dinner so much easier. And then when it comes to cleaning up, when we're talking about pans and things like that, unless the pan says it can go in the dishwasher, don't put it in the dishwasher. You also want to wait and let your pans cool, or else you can warp the pan, and then the bottom of the pan, when it gets kind of wiggly on the stove, it'll warp. And then just washing with a regular dish soap and a good scrubbing pad, absolutely great for any type of pan that you have. I really like once you season your cast iron pans, those clean up so easy as long as you don't let it sit for a long time. All right, so we've learned about how to get the kitchen organized. Now, what's for dinner? Sometimes, I don't know about you, but I get in these ruts where I'm bored with all my recipes. I need some new recipes. And one of my favorite things that I've come across over the last 3 years is something called Living Plate. And Living Plate is this amazing recipe glossary, if you will, and meal planning tool. So if you go to my website, you can find a link to try. So don't worry about writing this down. This will be in the email that you get. But click on the link that you'll get from my email later today, or go to my website and you can get a 5-day trial of the Living Plate meal plan. It's really great because you can pick what meal plan you want to follow. So if you're gluten-free, there's a gluten-free plan. If you have diabetes and you want a low carbohydrate plan, there's a plan for that. If you're looking to maximize your anti-inflammatory foods, plan for that. Lots of different plan options, and if there's not something there, email me and I will find it. The best thing I like about this site, I searched long and hard for something that had realistic meals. So something, that real people like you and I can make in the kitchen in under 30 minutes that actually tastes good. And this site has completely delivered. So many of my go-to recipes now come from this site. It's fantastic. And then if you feel like you're just lacking a little bit of structure when it comes to planning, shopping, and cooking, I have an online program called Plan, Shop, Cook. And you get 2 webinars that basically step you through exactly how to organize your plan, shop, and cook experience. It's especially applicable for COVID-19 stay-at-home time. I have you shop once a week, so it's very conducive to kind of how we're living our lives right now. There's also menu and grocery list templates. You get a free month with Living Plate included in here as well. And then we have a Facebook group for accountability. So that's really nice. And this is on sale through the end of May for $37. So it's pretty reasonable if you're just kind of struggling to need a little help with kind of getting your plan, shop, cook experience into something that's a little bit more orderly for you. There'll be a link to this in the email. And if you have any specific questions on whether this is good for you, shoot me an email and we'll chat about it. I hope you got something about organizing your kitchen. Again, like I said at the beginning, this is kind of like bumper bowling. We just want to make sure we're organizing. We don't fall into the gutters by making bad choices. And especially now, we're spending so much time at home. If we can make sure that we're surrounded by healthy foods, we can only make good choices. Does anyone have any questions today? All right. Well, this was awesome, everybody. Get excited for next week. We're going to talk about foods for optimal health, the ways to optimize your health. If you have spoken with me before and I've talked to you about a functional nutrition approach, we're going to be delving a little bit more into that. And next week, I'll also have a special guest who will chat a little bit about functional nutrition and functional medicine from a chiropractic angle. So she'll be on to talk about that as well. So bonus. In the meantime, stay tuned for your email. There'll be a replay of this, and there'll be links to the Living Plate free meal plan trial and the Plan, Shop, Cook program.
Thank you,
Right,
Brendan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful
Thank
day.
you.
Bye.
You too. Bye.
All right.